Strive UK is a socio-cultural advocacy organization. It is set up by young Muslim activists, most of them from India, and we're based in the UK. And we do undertake constant events and organize events and programs on issues to do with social justice, and we collaborate with other such organizations here in the UK as well. Now, coming to our topic, the Babri Masjid. I'll just give a slight introduction and we'll start introducing our speakers, why we are doing this. As we all know, the Babri Masjid is not the only mosque, nor was it the first mosque to be demolished in India. But what makes it unique, what makes the demolition of the Babri Masjid unique, and what makes it a watershed moment for both Muslims and non-Muslims alike in India, is the very spectacle nature of the demolition. And also, very importantly, the history of India from there on, from 1990 onwards. And the trauma caused by the Babri Masjid was not just limited to 1990. Rather, the trauma is intergenerational. And the effects of the demolition, as we all know, ripples on until today. Now, of late, as we all know, that there is this mass effort undertaking by the Hindutva forces in India, using various means to erase memories and erase the memory of Babri specifically. And once our memories are erased, or once memories are erased, our identities and with that, our sense of self ceases to exist. Now, memory plays a prominent role in preserving our identities. And in the event of trauma, like that of the Babri Masjid, memory becomes a powerful tool for us to be recalled. And especially in times like today, when the existence of our identities are challenged. So recalling Babri, the event in which the name in which our event is named, or recalling our memories, is not just a mere call for restoration, but it is a means of standing for something as a way of avoiding falling for anything. So recalling Babri or recalling our memory becomes not just an exercise to live in the past, but to help us in looking at alternatives to project us into the future. Now, in this regard, Strive UK intends to make a memorial of the Babri Masjid demolition. And a memorial is symbolized in this event, and which we plan to hold annually in the series called Recalling Babri. And today marks the inaugural of that memorial in that sense. Now, for this, we have today, none of our speakers actually need to be introduced because they are well known. And our first speaker for today, we have 3 speakers lined up for today. The first speaker is Professor Ram Punyani. Professor Ram Punyani is one of India's most ardent activists, writers, and one of the most loudest voices against communalism and injustice in India. He is the recipient of several human rights awards and honors. To list it itself will take more time. So I'm not listing the awards. And in his area of activism and scholarship, he specializes in the history and distortion of history. And he's also the author of several books and is associated with a lot of human rights, both national and international organizations and groups. Then next we have is Dr. SQR Ilyas. Dr. SQR Ilyas was importantly the convener of the Babri Masjid Coordination Committee, and he served as General Secretary of the All India Majlis Mushawara. The All India Majlis Mushawara is in a sense, the Indian equivalent of the MCB in the UK, and is also the Executive Committee member of the Muslim Personal Law Board. He has been at the forefront of the campaign of the Muslim community's fight for justice after the Babri demolition, and has been involved in various national campaigns, protests, and mobilizations. And for those of us who are not aware, Dr. Ilyas is also the father of Brother Umar Khalid, who has been constantly hounded by the Hindutva forces, and as we all know, is currently in imprisonment on trumped-up charges. Our prayers are with him. And our third speaker we have, as we all know, and is very well known to all of us, especially Strive UK, is Dr. Amrit Wilson. And Amrit is one of our leading voices here in the UK. She's the founding member of the South Asia Solidarity Group and has been instrumental in organizing and mobilizing and protesting here in the UK back in 1990 itself when the Babri Masjid was demolished. She's also an author and she's a leader actually, And the South Asia Solidarity Group has been responsible recently for organizing nationwide protests here in the UK on the Anti-Citizenship Amendment Act. So each speaker, just for the sake of the audience, each speaker will speak for 20 minutes, after which we'll take up questions. So, initially I invite Professor Punyani to speak. So Professor Punyani, you can start now.
Thank you very much. I am grateful to you for inviting me for this memorial series which you are starting. And I can see the importance of this for overall preservation of human rights in India. Because as you correctly pointed out, Babri Masjid demolition in a way has been a watershed in the history of independent India. And I must say that it is 6th December 1992 that people like me realize that communalism is not a superficial phenomenon which will go away. Communalism is not a phenomenon which is just targeting the Muslim community, that it has deeper politics, it has deeper agenda, and that deeper agenda relates not only to abolition of the democratic space, but that deeper agenda also involves restoration of the values from the times when graded hierarchy, caste system, and secondary status of women was a part of the whole thing. So, of course, I personally speaking, I realized that in human rights areas, demolition of Babri Mosque was a very big event in the sense this was also the first major victory of Hindu communalism, Hindu nationalism in India. Now I'll just like to give a brief recall of 4 or 5 incidents which are very important for us to understand as to what has been the impact of Babri Mosque demolition. Of course, it did shake the Muslim community in no way worse than that. Secondly, it unleashed a series of massive violence, particularly in Bombay, Surat, Bhopal, in which the property and lives of Muslims were done away with great amount of impunity, sometimes supported by state powers, etc. Now, that also created a sort of it accompanied a propaganda that Muslim rulers have destroyed the Hindu temples, and of course that transporting that Muslim rulers to today's Muslims. This was used to demonize the Muslim community in a very, very bad way. Of course, I will not go into the too many details of Babri Mosque, but 4 or 5 things I think we need to remember. Number one is that this seeds of Babri Mosque dispute, so-called dispute, were sown none other than by British themselves. And one of the major examples is that of the writings of Mrs. A.F. Beveridge, who while writing about Ayodhya, while writing about Babri Mosque, put a footnote in that probably there was a temple here. And then later on it got modified that there was a temple, there was a Ram temple, there was Babur demolished it, etc., etc. And of course, the secular historians had always opposed the idea that there was a temple or Lord Ram was born there, because there are 300 versions of Ramayana, and in some versions of Ramayana, it is Varanasi where King Dashrath ruled, and etc., etc. So to say that he was born there exactly at that spot where the Babri Masjid stood was a concoction which was sold to the people very, very successfully. So 1885, there was a court case, and the papers of Babri Mosque remain with Sunni Waqf Board. In 1949, Ram Lalla idols were installed in the temple in a surreptitious manner. Jawaharlal Nehru wanted UP Chief Minister to get these idols removed, but because of various reasons, he did not get it done. Secondly, under the pressure of Hindu nationalist forces in 1986-87, I think, Rajiv Gandhi got the locks of Babri Mosque opened, and 6th December 1992, in a planned, systematic way, the Hindu nationalist Sangh Parivar got it demolished. Now, when the two court cases need to be mentioned. In 2010, the Allahabad court judgment was not based on the papers, the documents, or the historical evidences. It took into consideration that people have a faith that Lord Ram was born there. So that was the defining part of the judgment, which divided the land between three parties, two of them belonging to Hindu side, one belonging to Muslim. And to cap it all, when the recent Supreme Court judgment came, they gave all the land to the Hindu parties and said that Muslims should be given a land, something at a other place. Now, even Supreme Court judgment, despite lot of criticism which one can make of the way judgment was arrived at, even Supreme Court recognized that there were two crimes committed there. Both the crimes went unpunished. First crime, installation of Lord Ram temple, Lord Ram idols in 1949. Second crime, right in the broad daylight, the people belonging to BJP, VHP, etc., actively demolishing the mosque. Court recognized it, but no punishment for that. Liberhan Commission named people like Advani, Joshi, Uma Bharti as the lead and Vinay Katiyar as the lead people, but no punishment for that. They were also exonerated by another judgment. So overall, while it can be seen from the point of view as to how Muslim community's identity got battered, shaken, there is another aspect to that. And the first aspect of that is that through this campaign, this was the first major campaign through which Hindu nationalism got a big strength. It was used before every election, and in every election after this, BJP emerged stronger and stronger. And if one sees that on one side, the intensity and the broadness of communal violence went on increasing since the Rath Yatra started. On the second hand, parallel to this, the electoral power of BJP also started going up. So this is one correlation which one can be made, and probably some mathematical model can be evolved around that. Second is that this was taken as an example that how Muslim rulers were cruel, how they were insulting to Hindus' feelings, how they destroyed Hindu temples. I have dealt with it in detail that temple destruction has nothing to do with the religion of the king. By and large, temple destructions were done by for different purposes, like for wealth, for in humiliating the defeated king, etc. I will not go into that. But after this, the process of communal violence, which was already prevalent, got a qualitative change. And with this qualitative change, number one, the ghettoization of Muslim community started going up and up. So far, whatever be the case, despite the deep wounds of partition, despite the pre-partition riots and all that, the community was trying to integrate with each other. The community was trying to have a Indian identity at the forehead, and different communities were living together. But after 1992, the process of ghettoization of Muslim community, the process of marginalization of Muslim community started going up and up. Now, so I see Babri demolition as the first major success which gave strength to sectarian nationalism as propagated by RSS and BJP and its total cabal. And since then we see that Indian politics has not been dominated by the issues related to people's problems like poverty, hunger, disease, lack of health facilities, lack of employment. It has not been dominated by that, but it has been dominated by the issues related to identity. And in this issues related to identity, constantly it is the Muslim community, and after that Christian community also, who have been on the firing line. And to name the few examples, I'll begin with the other way around. Recently, the world is facing the corona pandemic. In India, of course, not to go into details, the warnings were much earlier. Even Rahul Gandhi, at whom people laugh and make fun of him, even on 12th February, he gave a tweet that government should take care of the impending corona threat. It was all ignored because the ruling government was busy with other things which were more of political interest to them. And then we suddenly realized that there is a Tablighi Jamaat event going on in Delhi. After that, the whole media, which practically is controlled by the ruling party, pounced upon those Tablighis and in turn on the Muslim community, saying that it is because of those Tablighis that Corona has spread in India. Tablighis have prepared Corona bomb and they are out to do the Corona jihad. So this is a type of thing which has been the latest example. And then of course, currently we are facing the unfoldment of the communal agenda in the form of love jihad, and of course being unleashed just to demonize the Muslim community. It is also being unleashed. The real purpose, the deeper purpose is to control the lives of women, because patriarchy, which is accompaniment of communal politics, always wants to control the lives of women. In between, we saw the lynching, which was unknown word in India. There is no equivalent word in Hindi, at least which I know. Lynching, which was a word which was taken from the US anti South African Americans violence, that was started here in the name of cow, in the name of beef eating, etc. So all these things which are dominating Indian politics since the Babri demolition is the sign that Hindu nationalism is going on ascendance and ascendance. And of course, Modi's second victory, and now we saw that ruthlessly I don't know why courts are not taking up this matter. Abolition of Article 370, how ruthlessly it was done. Then CAA protest, and I must add here that CAA protests against CAA, which were sparked off by this act of the government, and the government also brutally attacked students in AMU, Jamia Millia, and other places, which in a way, combination of these factors gave impetus to one of the best, most democratic, most constitutional protest in the form of Shaheen Bagh. History will always remember Shaheen Bagh movement, and Shaheen Bagh movement, I think, is not just the pain and anguish of Muslim community just because of CAA, just because of CAA. My own understanding tells me that this is a cumulative pain and anguish of the Muslim community because of its marginalization, because of its being subjected to communal violence during last so many years, that the great movement like Shaheen Bagh came. It is unfortunate that movement had to be interrupted because of Corona jihad and by the machinations of the ruling party, because of which daily violence took place, in which the major loss of lives was that of Muslims and the major loss of property was again that of Muslims. So this, I take the opportunity to say that politics under the cover of religion anywhere, it aims to do a couple of things which already we are witnessing in our country. Number one, abolishing the democratic space, which is very much visible. And now we have come to a state that those protesting are generally called anti-national. And the latest example of this is the farmers movement. And the discomfort of farmer is again being tried to link with sort of a anti-nationalism of a particular variety. Students protest again in the same category and different category. Great thinkers who are currently giving the shape and direction to social movements in India have been labeled as urban Naxals, and many of them are in the jails. And one of the example is, of course, Umar Khalid, our young friend, who with his immaculate understanding of the present situation and who with his utmost honesty has been leading and participating in different type of protests. So this Babri Mosque demolition reminds me, unleashing of a very downhill path for Indian democracy, in which democratic institutions now have been stifled. And apart from that, the atrocities against Muslims and Christians anyway are there. Anyway, I'm saying because they have been going even earlier. But after this, atrocities against Dalits, atrocities against women, atrocities against Adivasis, they have increased many-fold. Statistics to tell us that since this government came to power in 2014, the incidence of atrocities against these weaker sections of society are constantly going up and up. And that's a matter of worry, because my understanding is the politics which has been rampaging the country, which has been responsible for demolition of Babri Mosque, is standing on 3 or 4 major pillars. Its first pillar, first pillar is to target the minorities, as of course as it was done in Germany, targeting the Jews and finding a sort of a enemy within them and subjecting them to different type of atrocities. So this is one. And second, its base is to see that the values of the times of Manusmriti, Brahminical domination, and caste restoration of caste and gender hierarchy, which has changed during last practically from freedom movement and from independence to 1980, there was some change, some betterment in the status of women and Dalits. Now that is again being pushed back. So in a way, I am not here saying that it is only Hindu nationalism which aims at things like that. Nationalism in the name of religion anywhere. It may be nationalism in the name of Buddhism in Sri Lanka and Myanmar, or nationalism in the name of Islam in Pakistan or Afghanistan. Anywhere where it comes, it does away with the democratic space. It does away, it imposes a lot of hardships on the weaker sections of society. And Indian context, I see that if we want to now overcome this politics, which is very important, analyzing it, important, memorizing, keeping a memory of it alive, important. And it is important because that is the strength, that is the base on which we have to build a resistance to this onslaught of this politics, which is sectarian, narrow, exclusionary, etc., etc. So what do we do for that? My thinking is that Babri Mosque could be demolished, not just because of a small propaganda. There was a big propaganda, blitzkrieg, and a constant demonization, constant propaganda against Muslim kings. They destroyed temples, they imposed Islam by force. Muslims are having 4 wives, multiple children, they are terrorists, etc., etc. This propaganda is the base on which hatred is created. It is because of this hatred that violence can be orchestrated. It is because of this violence that polarization takes place. And it is because of this polarization that communal party is becoming stronger and stronger. So if we want to learn the lesson from Babri demolition, the first lesson is that the hate which has been created against religious minorities has to be undone. What Gandhi did by uniting all the religious communities, that has to be brought back. Whatever Sufi saints and Bhakti saints did by uniting the communities, that spirit has to be brought out. The idea of India as having liberty, equality, fraternity, equality of people of all religion, that has to be revived. And for that, I suggest, number one, the misconceptions against religious minorities have to be combated effectively. Number two, the bridges of love between different communities need to be cultivated. Number three, the social movements which speak for rights of weaker sections of society need to be supported, need to be strengthened. And number four, at no cost should we let the communal party come to power again, because once it comes to power, all those processes which are anti-democratic, which are against constitution, are unleashed in a very clever manner, and the of pain and wound of events like Babri Mosque not only get deepened, but they can be revived in the different forms also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Punyani, for actually, in a very short time, I know 20 minutes is not enough, and I've heard many of your lectures, so 20 minutes doesn't do justice, but in a matter of time, for actually precisely in very concise terms outlining the history and also linking it to what is happening today, and also giving us a hint that there is a future we can look up to by outlining what we can do next. So our next speaker is Professor Dr. SQR Ilyas. So Ilyas Saab, you can start now.
As far as the Babri Masjid issue is concerned, what we see is that Muslims of India were betrayed by many from many sides, from judiciary, from political parties, from I can say the religious leadership. Everybody has betrayed the Muslims. You know, in the beginning itself, the Muslims, when the dispute arises, the Muslim leadership, especially the religious leadership, make it clear that if it is proved that Babri Masjid was built by demolishing a temple, we will hand over it to you. Because as far as the Islamic Sharia is concerned, Islam very clearly says that you cannot construct a mosque on illegally occupied land. So if it is proved that Babri Masjid was constructed by demolishing a temple, whether it is a Ram temple or any other temple, we will vacate this place and we will hand over it to you. And secondly, we have said that as far as the Muslims are concerned, if this place is not occupied illegally, then if this land has been given as a waqf for the mosque, it remains as a mosque till the final day. So, so Muslims were of the opinion that if it is a mosque legally constructed, so Muslims are not empowered to hand over it to anybody else. Secondly, the position of the Muslim was that we can solve this issue by negotiation, with dialogue. We are ready for dialogue, and we had several dialogue with the Hindu leadership as well as the government-appointed peoples. Then we said that otherwise the court of law will decide the issue, the title suit of the Babri Masjid. Unfortunately, we can say that this issue was crop up during the Britishers' time, but in independent India, for the first time, when there was a Congress government at the center as well as in the state, in Uttar Pradesh, the idols were kept surreptitiously in Babri Masjid on the night of 22nd December 1949. There again, I can say that the Congress party or the central government and the state government failed. They would have vacated the land. They would have taken out the idols and handed it to Muslims. But the K.K. Nair, who was the commissioner of the Faizabad, he locked the door, saying that the dispute has arisen. Now the court will decide. Unfortunately, that was the masjid, which was the prayer that was going on there, it was locked. Again, we can say that in 1986, 1st February 1986, it was Rajiv Gandhi, who was a Congress Prime Minister at the center. And again, there was in UP, again, there was a Congress government. They unlocked the mosque. And Faizabad, the court has given a judgment unilaterally. They not invited the Muslim community, although there was a dispute. Both parties were there, but Muslims were not invited. And unilaterally, they have decided in favor of opening the doors of the mosque and make it open for the darshan of the Ram temple, Ram Lalla, which was there. Then what we have seen is that ceremony or opening of the gates was telecasted on Doordarshan throughout the country. Till that time, this issue was only located or only it was a local issue. It was limited to the Faizabad and adjacent areas. Now, after unlocking of the gates and showing it on the Doordarshan, every person in India, they got to know that this dispute is there. And it has been said that now Ram Lalla is free, Ram Lalla is open, everybody can visit, everybody can make a darshan, everybody can do the puja. So this issue was made a national issue by Congress party itself. Then we have seen that it is again, and there was a saying that because the Muslims were appeased in Shah Banu, they brought a law in the parliament, and because to appease the Hindus, they have unlocked the Babri Masjid gates. Then again in 1989, it was Rajiv Gandhi government which has conducted, which has done Shila Niyas in 1989 in Ayodhya in a disputed place. BJP and Sangh Parivar came into picture in 1984 only. They have taken, and in 1986 or 1985, BJP has taken a resolution in their working committee that we will make it a political issue and we will lead a campaign. What I'm saying is that, and then what happened in 1992, the Babri Masjid was demolished. Again, I can say, in connivance with the national central government. You know, Mr. Narasimha Rao, who was the Prime Minister of the Congress party, he was the person who assured the delegation on 5th of December 1992 that no stone of Babri Masjid will be removed. I will take care of it. Our forces will be there. But central forces were kept there, and the entire episode of demolition was going on till 6 evening. And then only after the last dome was removed, a last dome was demolished, then only Mr. Narasimha Rao brought President. So unfortunately, we cannot say that the Congress party's hands are very, they were a secular party, they did not indulge in such type of things. Babri Masjid issue, I can say, was because of the Congress party. Congress party was trying to take mileage of this by appeasing the Hindu community through this issue. Then what we have seen is that in September 2010, the judgment was given. Again, in center, there was a the government of the Congress party. Again, the judgment was given, and the judgment, if you see the Allahabad High Court Lucknow judgment, you can laugh. There are three parties. It was a title suit. It was not a suit based on faith and based on Asta. It was a title suit. Title suit can be decided on the revenue record and the land record and the witnesses and the historical facts. But they say that there is a Asta and there are three parties. And they have rejected the suit of Sunni Central Waqf Board by saying that it has been time barred. When Sunni Central Waqf is taken out from the case, then how they award 1/3 of the land to the Muslims? For that they brought a historical one thing from the history, that one traveler, German traveler, says that Muslims were also praying at this place. So they said that Hindus and Muslims both were praying at this place. So there are three parties, 1/3 will be divided between them. Then comes the matter comes in Supreme Court. Again in Supreme Court, you know, this Allahabad High Court judgment was a very lengthy judgment, 8,000 pages judgment, and which was supported by 42,000 documents. When it comes in Supreme Court, again, I can say that this started in 2011, and the judgment was given in 2019. So the entire things were going on in Supreme Court. And I can say that because I was there in the High Court as well as in Supreme Court, and we are witnessing what is happening, how the things were proceeding. Again, the Supreme Court repeatedly said that the issue is a title suit. It will not be decided on the basis of faith. It will not be decided on the basis of Asta. But ultimately what happened? If you see the Supreme Court judgment, we can laugh what is this judgment? The observation of the court and the final judgment contradict themselves. Thing is that Supreme Court judgment says that there is no evidence to say that Babri Masjid was constructed by demolishing a mandir, by demolishing a temple. There is no evidence to prove that. Secondly, the Supreme Court judgment again says that whatever archaeological digging was done, Archaeological Survey of India has excavated the land, and they find certain things beneath the Babri Masjid, but that belongs to 12th century. That means 400 before the Babri Masjid constructed. Again, Supreme Court judgment says that the mosque, the prayers were going on in the mosque till 22nd December 1949. Again, the judgment says that the idols were kept inside the mosque suspiciously on the night of 22nd December 1949. It is an illegal act, it is a criminal act, it is an unconstitutional act. This is the wordings of the Supreme Court. Again, the Supreme Court said that the demolition of Babri Masjid is an unfortunate thing. It is again illegal, it is criminal act, and it is unconstitutional. But the problem is that the final judgment goes in favor of the people, those who brought idols inside, those who were the people, those who demolished the Babri Masjid. So we cannot understand what is the basis of this judgment. And when they were saying that it will not be decided on the basis of faith, but finally they decided it on the basis of faith. And they said that Muslims will be given 5 acres of land somewhere in Ayodhya. Muslims never demanded a land instead of Babri Masjid. Their case was only that we need Babri Masjid. Secondly, at the negotiation table, what has happened? We involved ourselves in negotiating with Vishnu Parishad, with Sadhu Sant of Ayodhya, and then finally government appointed people. You know, firstly, when we were discussing with the Vishnu Parishad's sadhus, so when we asked them what proof you have that this land belongs to Ram, and what proof you have to say that Ram was born here? If you go to Ayodhya, you will find there are 5 temples apart from Babri Masjid. This portion, there were 5 temples which say they say that it is Ram Janam Sthan temple, and every priest says that Ram was born here. So if we ask them what proof you have to say that this is the place where Ram was born, they say that, you know, for you it is a mosque, you can construct mosque anywhere. For us it is the Ram Mandir, it is our astha. We beg you to give this land to us. So this way the negotiation is stopped with Vishnu Parishad, Sadhu Sant. Secondly, when Kanchi Koti Shankaracharya came into picture in 2001, again he says that if you assure me that you will wait for the court verdict, and that entire area, 67-acre land, although Babri Masjid area is only 1480 square yard. But they say that if you allow us to construct a temple on the other land, which is acquired by Narasimha Rao government, 67-acre land, leaving aside the Babri Masjid area, if you allow us to construct a mandir, and if the court case come in our favor, we will take Babri Masjid issue and we will construct the final dome there. But then we ask them, if you say that okay, we may allow you to construct the masjid, but you give us the site plan, which says that if suppose the judgment not goes in your favor, then where you will construct the garbhagriha. So he did not give us. And then we asked them, you give us the assurance from Vishnu Parishad RSS that they will abide by this decision. Again, he did not. Again, he came in 2003 and he proposed some certain things that if you give us Babri Masjid, we will in return no mosque will be touched. But if you did not, then Ayodhya and then Mathura issue will come up, then Kashi issue will come. So it was a threat to us. So then again, the negotiation did not bring any result. When the issue came in Supreme Court, there again Supreme Court appointed a mediation committee headed by Justice Khalifatullah. The entire process of negotiation, entire process of mediation, this mediation committee was insisting on the Muslims only that you give up the land, and in return you can, whatever you demand, we are ready to pay, give it to you. And on the other, and in mediation, the next party, any Hindu party, is not coming on the table, across the table. Faith and astha, whatever will the issue of astha, whether it is correct or not, but they have the astha. So you give up the land, and in return you can be given some more land. You can construct a mosque, you can construct education institution, and so on and so forth. We said that no, we don't need anything, any alternative land. Just you prove that this mosque was built by demolishing a temple, we will give it to you. Otherwise, let the court decide. Ultimately, mediation fails. When this is the betrayal by, I can say that by the court and by the political leadership and by the people, those who are involved in mediation now. This thing. Then thirdly, but what we have seen that, you know, the Supreme Court clearly says that idols were kept surreptitiously inside the mosque. It is illegal, it is unconstitutional, it is criminal act. But we did not find any religious Hindu leadership coming openly and saying that it was an illegal act. The mosque should be given back to Muslims and the idols should be removed. When the locks were opened by the court order, again, mysteriously, there again we did not find any Shankaracharya or any sadhu or any sant coming out against this. When Babri Masjid was demolished, okay, I can say that there are many liberal people, many secular non-Muslims were criticizing it, were with Muslim community, and we are saying that the injustice has been done to the Muslim community. But we, again, I can say that the religious Hindu community, they did not come out. Thirdly, when we ask them, you say that it is our astha. We ask them, what is the history of your astha? When this astha, when you have seen that this place belonged to Ram, because you know in Allahabad High Court Lucknow case, when the Hindu community or Hindu religious leadership were asked what is the period of Ram, some parties say that Ram was born crores of years before. Some people say that Ram was born lakhs of years before. Some people say that Ram was born several years before. The problem is that they don't know exactly what is the period of Ram, but they exactly know that where Ram was born. This is a very mysterious thing. So we ask them when this astha has come up that Ram was born here. There is no such thing, no evidence, no historical proof, no documentation. You know, Ramcharitmanas was written during the Akbar's period by Tulsidas ji. And he wrote the Ramcharitmanas by sitting inside in Ayodhya. There again, he did not say he was the Bhakt of Ram. And after that, Ram temple started constructing in India. Before that, there was no Ram temples. And after Ramcharitmanas, he has written Ramcharitmanas by sitting in Lucknow, in Faizabad, in Ayodhya. He did not mention anywhere that on the birthplace of Ram, the temple was demolished and the mosque was established there, mosque was constructed there. If he would have raised this issue during the Akbar's time, Akbar's rule, that place would have been handed over to Hindus. So there is no historical fact, there is no historical proof that the Hindu has a astha with that place. There are various things. I don't go into detail, and that is not the subject matter of today. So I can say that on Babri Masjid issue, we have seen whether it is political party, it is secular parties or communal parties, they are on the same plane. Some openly say that we want to construct a Ram Mandir. Some people have facilitated for the construction of Ram Mandir. Whatever has happened on 6th December, it could not have happened without the support of the central government. Without the central government facilitated the Sangh Parivar to do that act. Secondly, judiciary, very unfortunate that on this issue, judiciary's role was not correct. The judgment of Supreme Court, again, it is I can say that this judgment cannot, nobody can accept it, that it is a good judgment or it is based on the fact. And again, the religious leadership. Anyway, now the issue is and secondly, the second thing I want to state here, that as far as the Babri Masjid demolition is concerned, Supreme Court has clearly said that it is an act of, it is a criminal act, it is illegal, it is unconstitutional. But after that, the judgment came in the Allahabad High Court, Lucknow bench, CBI court has given a judgment acquitting all the people, those who were accused of demolition of Babri Masjid. So again, this we can say that whether it is a Faizabad court judgment or whether it is a Allahabad High Court Lucknow bench judgment in Babri Masjid issue title suit, or Supreme Court judgment or demolition judgment, everywhere Muslims were denied the justice. So this is the history of Babri Masjid. Anyway, now the chapter is closed because Supreme Court is a supreme, highest court in India. After its judgment, we cannot expect anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilyas Sahab, for detailing your efforts in it. It was also very interesting to hear the experiences you had when negotiating with the VHP and the RSS. And thank you for appearing with us today. And the next speaker we have is Amrit Wilson. And Amrit Wilson is joining us from here in the UK itself. So Amrit, you can speak next.
Well, I'd like to firstly thank the organizers for arranging this very important meeting, and to say that I thought that both speakers made such very important points. And Dr. Ilyas, of course, explained very clearly the betrayals which the Muslim community has faced in the context of the Babri Masjid demolition, and the game of appeasement which was played particularly by the Congress. And there can be no doubt that the BJP stands on the shoulders of the Congress, in a sense, if you look at it historically. And that's led us to this present. And there, I think we need to actually look at what the BJP is. Because in many ways, the BJP is different from any other party that has been in India. The Congress is now finished, and we are stuck with the BJP. And this is a moment of acute crisis, because what we're seeing in India is fascism. And we can, we can say, yes, of course, this is the anniversary of the Babri Masjid, and we must remember it. And this is so important for our memories. But it's also the anniversary, a few days later, on the 11th of December, of the passage of the Citizenship Amendment Act. Which is really an extremely important act which will completely change the position of Muslims in India. And more recently, we've had the laws against love jihad. And if you look at the two sets of laws, firstly the CAA, and secondly the love jihad, then they are exact parallels of the so-called Nuremberg laws, which were passed by the Nazis. And the Nuremberg laws were passed just prior to the genocide of Jews. So we are in a very, very acute crisis, in a situation of extreme danger. Since the other speakers have given us so many details about the actual process of the demolition of the masjid, I would like to focus briefly on the extent to which the demolition of the Babri Masjid was a milestone of another kind for the BJP. It was a point when it began to reshape itself as a party of neoliberal capitalism. And in that context, I would like to examine the role of the British diaspora in helping this reshaping and in the process of normalizing hate and Islamophobia. And before that, I'd just like to make a couple of quick points about the Sangh Parivar. Firstly, the Sangh Parivar's views of Hinduism don't originate in India's ancient history. They're drawn from British colonialism's Brahminical interpretations of Hinduism. And secondly, that the Sangh's view of history and its notion of Muslims as hostile invaders were also drawn from the colonial divide and rule policies after the First War of Independence in 1857, where Hindus and Muslims had united against the British. These distorted ideas of religion and history, together with some aspects of European fascism, have shaped the Islamophobic and casteist and misogynistic notion of Hindutva, which, though sometimes Hindutva is mistaken to be a religious philosophy, it is in fact the political ideology of Hindu supremacy. And particularly relevant to us in the diaspora, here in Britain, for example, is the fact that, like many other fascist organizations, the RSS also aims to establish a world community of right-wing Hindus, and this has now become increasingly important. So in the pursuit of this world community, it set up its first overseas branch in Nairobi in Kenya, where Gujaratis had migrated from their villages in India. And children and adults were taught the RSS version of Indian culture and history. They were provided with physical training to be fighters for Hindutva, and there were satsangs where leaders of the RSS held discussions. And this really influenced the immigrants from Gujarat, who saw this as providing a home from home. And it was this community, already indoctrinated in Hindutva, that was eventually to come to Britain and become a key force in supporting the Modi regime. In UK, the first branch of the HSS was set up in 1966 under the orders of RSS chief MS Golwalkar himself. When the East African nations started arriving in Britain in large numbers as a result of the Africanization policies in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Malawi, the HSS, that's the overseas wing of the RSS, began to flourish and open branches all over the country. It began to cater for families. It gradually took over all temples, including the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or ISKCON, which is better known as the Hare Krishnas. And Hare Krishnas are very popular in the UK because they dole out free vegetarian food from vans, and many people don't realize that they're linked to the Hindu right. Despite all this, the 70s was still a time when in Britain, the Gujaratis from East Africa, both Hindu and Muslim, became involved in working class struggles in this country, working together in harmony and organizing some historic strikes. But things were to change in the run-up of the demolition of the Babri Masjid. And that's why this period is so important when the Babri Masjid was demolished. In India, of course, Advani's Rath Yatra was whipping up communalism as it went across India. And there were horrific scenes, and Modi was part of that Rath Yatra, which is interesting, which we must remember. And at the same time, in the UK, the government began to fund faith communities. And this helped the Hindutva groups to acquire recognition and resources from local councils. At the same time, globally, we see the rise of Islamophobia in line with America's global strategies. Anti-Muslim hatred began to escalate dramatically in the Gujarati Hindu communities in Britain. Following the demolition of the Babri Masjid, and even in the period immediately prior to it, Hindutva organizations began to collect money in the communities from ordinary people for gold bricks for the construction of a Ram temple. And it was at this point that the BJP began to reshape itself so that its nationalism, or so-called nationalism, began to fit with neoliberalism. In other words, sort of fit in with modern capitalism of this particular phase. It modernized, but the violence against Muslims and Dalits and other religious minorities were embedded within a ruthless neoliberal version of development, or vikas, as it was projected. It began to woo multinational companies, and it was here that the UK connection became very useful. Many of the more well-off refugees from East Africa, particularly those from Uganda, returned to Africa when Idi Amin was ousted, and they rebuilt their businesses. The Madhwanis, for example, had a massive industrial empire. They returned to Uganda in the 1980s, repossessed their properties with loans from the World Bank. They rebuilt and extended their empire, which today has an annual turnover of $500 million in Uganda alone, and much more in India. In 1994, just 2 years after the Babri Masjid was demolished, to give thanks to God, Manubhai Madhwani, the head of the Madhwani Empire, decided on a lavish festival of spiritual unity in London. In fact, it turned out to be mainly about Gujarati Hindu Brahminical unity. High-profile Hindutva-supporting godmen like Morari Bapu, who has recently welcomed the Ayodhya verdict, and Swami Chidanand Saraswati were the stars on that occasion. 3 years later, when the Swaminarayan temple was completed, all the big names of South Asian business, including the Madhwanis, were present. And the Madhwanis' love and support for Modi has continued and increased, with the Madhwani family going out of their way to praise even Modi's handling of the pandemic, despite the many deaths of migrant workers which it caused. Meanwhile, in Gujarat, Modi, as chief minister, was handing over huge chunks of land and coastline to multinational companies for a pittance. The so-called Gujarat model saw high levels of growth in relation to the rest of India, but it also led to some of the worst rates of farmer suicides and poverty levels and child malnutrition levels far exceeding all India levels, and the virtual elimination of labor rights, of course. The multinationals like Reliance, SR, Tatas, and many others flocked to Gujarat, and Modi became known as a Vikas Purush, a man of development. Then there were those like Gautam Adani, who is well known for his environmental crimes in Australia, whom Modi helped to nurture. Modi's favors were returned, and in many companies began to fully support the Hindutva project. For example, Jaguar, Dunlop, Jindal, and many other multinational companies sponsored a 3-day World Hindu Congress, where at a workshop on education, a pamphlet was distributed listing the 5 enemies of Hindu society, 5 fingers in the claw of the demon Mahasur. Among them were Marxists, the thumb of the demon's claw, which has given birth to multiple bastard offspring, like communists, socialists, liberals, Maoists, anarchists, and all other forms of leftists, and Muslims, who are the poisonous fruit of Islam. The Gujarat model of development was clearly the other side of the coin from the so-called laboratory of Hindutva, or the Gujarat genocide of Muslims as we know it. It became a blueprint which would be repeated over and over again against Christians in Odisha in 2008 and against Muslims in Muzaffarnagar in 2018. And to an extent, again in UP just last year. But through all this horror, money has continued to flow from the UK to the RSS. Around this time, in line with their role as a world community of Hindus, Gujarati Hindus began to form themselves into vote banks for political parties. It's not surprising then that both Labour MP Barry Gardiner and Tory MP Bob Blackman, who had invited some vicious Islamophobes to the UK Parliament, were given Padma Shris this year. They have been long established followers of Modi and Hindutva. In 2001, Barry Gardiner visited Gujarat and personally presented Modi with a check for £1 million collected by Seva International for earthquake relief. After the Gujarat genocide of 2002, progressive South Asian organizations in Britain exposed Seva International for diverting these funds to organizations directly involved in carrying out the violence. Barry Gardner continued to adore Modi even after he was banned from entering UK or America for human rights abuses. In 2013, he again tried to invite him to the UK, but was forced to change his mind after South Asia Solidarity Group, together with Dalit organizations and some human rights and trade union groups, staged a very effective protest outside his constituency office. In fact, I'd like to highlight at this point the role which Dalit organizations have played in Britain. They have always fought back against the vile casteism which is prevalent in the UK, in the Hindu community. They've also taken a stand against Islamophobia in solidarity with Shaheen Bagh, for example, and most recently stood against the revocation of Article 370 in Kashmir. Today, a new, smooth, westernized image of Hindutva has emerged, particularly in the world of finance and business. And they also moved extremely close to Israel. We must remember that it was just in 1992, after the demolition of the Babri Masjid, that India's relationship with Israel became much more open and enthusiastic. Currently, India is the world's largest purchaser of Israeli weapons, accounting for some 50% of Israel's arms sales, and providing a huge boost to the Israeli economy. And increasingly, British Hindutva organizations are also projecting the notion of Hindu phobia and saying that it is like anti-Semitism, although Hindu phobia has no basis historically or materially. The current Labour leader, Keir Starmer, has tried to cozy up to the Hindutva brigade, but at the moment they are completely aligned with the Tory party. They're looking forward to enrich themselves with trade deals after Brexit, and they know that the BJP's aims are being looked after by RSS supporting Priti Patel, the Home Minister, and Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, whose father-in-law is Narayana Murthy, the Infosys founder and Modi admirer. But we must not forget that the diaspora in Britain, the South Asian diaspora, is not a monolith. These things are not done in our name. And while Hindutva has its support here, there's also a lot of resistance, and it's growing. There were massive protests against the CAA and of course, Strive UK was part of it, as was South Asia Solidarity Group. And there were united forces at that time of Dalits, Muslims, as well as students and left-wing organizations. And as you know, a massive protest in support of farmers are planned over the next few days. And what is heartening, because we have to be optimistic, hoping for things to change, as the farmers have come out with some all-embracing demands, most importantly, for the release of all political prisoners. So I leave you with that. Obviously, it is not an easy situation, but all one can do is hope for the best and organize for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrit, and thank you for drawing your attention to the role of the diaspora here in the UK specifically, in its role in actually publicizing Hindutva and strengthening Hindutva, and also that invariably the diaspora also has a role in resisting it as well. So now I don't think so that because all the three talks are very clear, and it was a historical nature, it was a legal nature, and also bringing in the diasporic element as well.